How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the demon of shadows and fell in love with alien? Part 1. Huge shout out to PhantomWraith for this story. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. He stared apathetically at the giant eyeless beast before him. The beast hissed softly as it leaned forward until their faces were only a few inches apart. It had 4 gangly arms with powerful and compact muscles under its unusually hard black skin, a long tail with spines running along the top of it, with a barb equipped to the tip of the tail, sharp claws on the ends of its fingers, sharp semi-translucent teeth filled its mouth, a smaller fang jaw-like object in the beast's mouth. A large bony carapace on its head that extended backwards like a solid crown of some kind, and its torso looked like it was starved. "Why do you not fear me, young mammal?" The beast asked through some kind of telepathic link it had established with him. Naruto, who was only 6 years old, idly noted that its voice was soft and melodious with a feminine tone, making him come to the conclusion that the monstrous creature was quite possibly female. "Why should I? You have done me no wrong, so there is no need for me to fear you," Naruto replied as he leaned against the wall of the chamber with his hands in his pockets. Glancing around at his surroundings, Naruto spoke up again with a hint of a smirk on his normally expressionless face. "Besides, you saved me from the men who wanted to kill me for something beyond my control." The queen tilted her head slightly in curiosity. This human was unlike any her kind had encountered before throughout the ages. Human, those who knew of them, feared and hated them. They tried to hunt them and slaughter them. Sure, they hunted the humans in return, but only for the greater good of their kind. The queen, who had lived for nearly 8 centuries so far, could not remember a single human to show no fear or hatred for her or her kind. "You are interesting, young mammal," the queen stated calmly before taking a couple steps back and turning towards a tunnel leading away from the chamber they were in, but looked back at Naruto. "Come. We have much to discuss." Whatever, Naruto mumbled gruffly as he shoved his hands in his pockets and followed the obsidian-skinned creature down the tunnel. Unknown to either of them, their actions changed the course of history for both of their species. 10 years later. The pitiful masses before him went about their daily routines, ignorant of the true threat to their existence. Pushing back the urge to growl, he stayed within the confines of the shadow and watched as the throng of humans passed him by. Vanishing and reappearing in another shadow in the darkness of his den. He was 5'11" and 15 years old with smooth waist-length black hair held up in a ponytail by a black hair tie, solid obsidian eyes with metallic silver slit pupils and black sclera, pointed ears, sharp black claws, long and sharp fang-like canine teeth, black fang tattoos on both cheeks, and a muscular build like a street fighter or boxer. He was wearing dark gray armor that was much like Anbu armor, only made of metal with a black hood attached to the collar of his body armor, a dark gray and black camouflage cloak draped around him, black fingerless elbow-length gloves with dark gray metal caps on his knuckles, dark gray and black camouflage bracers on his forearms, and black steel toe boots were on his feet. He was also wearing a black armored face mask pulled up to cover the lower half of his face, a pair of collapsible multi-bladed shurikens strapped to his lower back, a pair of ninjato swords crossed on his back with the handles down at his hips, and a pair of kunai holsters on both of his thighs. Tied around his head much like a blindfold to hide his eyes was his custom-made Konoha Hit I-8, which bore a black non-reflective metal plate with a leaf insignia traced in gray and attached to a strip of dark gray and black camouflage cloth. This was Uzumaki Naruto. He had been living and training with the queen and her children for the past 10 years, and he had come out for the better in his eyes, at least. Through an ancient ritual the queen knew of from word of mouth between her kind labeled as xenomorphs by humans for the past 3,000 years, Naruto had become one of them, but QB had stepped in and altered some things. A perfect hybrid of human, Xeno, and fox. While he may look human, Naruto was anything but. His blood held the same acidic qualities as Xeno blood, he could hunt down anything and anyone in zero visibility circumstances, his strength was greater than even the queen's, he had 2 forms other than his current human form, his speed and agility was greater than even a high-level jounin, his reflexes were even faster. And his knowledge of human and Xeno anatomy biology psychology was vast. Naruto pulled his mask down and loosened his Hit I-8, letting both items hang around his neck. While he may be able to do just about everything without using his eyes, Naruto still preferred to see things with his own abyssal eyes. In this case, it was the sleeping woman lying on the bed and sporting a swollen womb, denoting her pregnancy. Although only a teen in the eyes of the world, Naruto was far more mature in both body and mind. Dispelling the constant and enhanced seal-based henge he wore when out in the world, the smoke cleared to show Naruto standing at 6'9" and slightly more muscled, though wiry and lithe. The woman had long crimson hair that fell down to her wide hips, full and luscious lips stained red, creamy white skin, full and perky cup breasts, a plump and meaty rear, muscular thighs, and long legs. Her belly was practically the size of a beach ball, signifying she was heavy with many offspring and very fertile. The woman was none other than Kyuubi no Kitsune, also known as Kanyuko Kira. Smiling softly, Naruto sat down at the edge of the bed beside Kira and placed a hand on the woman's massive womb. Closing his eyes peacefully and relaxing, Naruto could feel his children moving slightly. He felt the warmth they felt. He felt the same sense of safety that they felt. Slowly opening his eyes, Naruto brushed a few scarlet strands out of his lover's face and smiled lovingly. Even though he was cold and hostile towards humans, he was kind and gentle with his hive and his lover. Like everything else he owned, the bed was solid black with dark gray sheets and black covers. The floor was covered in dark gray and black tile set in a checkerboard pattern, while the walls were painted dark gray and covered with black tribal designs. As in Kira's den, well, simply another chamber in the webwork of underground tunnels beneath Konoha, lacked any kind of lighting as did the rest of the catacombs. Leaning down, Naruto kissed Kira on the forehead and then on her belly before standing up. She was only 3 months into the pregnancy, and Naruto knew she was only going to grow larger with time. As he walked away and exited the den, Naruto thought about Kira's condition. She was truly pregnant with a new breed of xenomorphs, something the vixen already knew of and had even encouraged prior to being impregnated by Naruto. She wasn't the only one, either. Naruto had impregnated several other human women that were restrained in the birthing chambers, and they, too, only were 3 months along. He had figured out that because the queen had used her own blood during the ritual, Naruto had been granted the ability to reproduce more xenomorphs. However, it was different as well. While the queen was immobilized due to her egg sac, Naruto was free to go where he wished. Also, instead of using a medium facehugger like the queen, Naruto can directly impregnate any human, or in Kira's case, demon, female. Even though his ability is limited only to female humans, any woman he impregnates becomes heavy with many, many more xenos than a person animal impregnated by a facehugger, which allows only one at a time. In fact, Kira was on her first litter, as she calls it. Naruto never bothered trying to figure out a different name for it and just let it be. Anyways, a normal human female is unable to survive giving birth to a full batch, which usually consists of 3 to 4 dozen xenos on average, while Kira, because of her near-instant healing factor, was pregnant with nearly twice that amount, and he suspected that she could be impregnated once again after a month of recovery without any complications in her health. Shaking his head to clear it, Naruto stopped at a balcony looking over a large open cavern. Inside, the walls and floor and ceiling were utterly covered by thousands of xenomorphs. Among them were drones, warriors, runners, praetorians, a handful of serpentine xenomorph dragons spawned from the giant snakes in the Forest of Death, which was right above them, and a number of 2 unique xenomorph types mixed in with the others. The first set looked no different than Xeno warriors, albeit twice their size. They did, however, have 2 horns on either side of their heads that dipped just below their bottom jaw and nearly a foot ahead of their mouths. Their tails were far stronger than any other, their tail had larger bladed tips, their claws were longer and sharper, and their jaws were slightly larger than any other Xeno. These had been labeled as Titans by Naruto. The second set were much like warriors as well, only more along the lines of the 4-legged variety like a runner. These, too, had the same kind of horns as a Titan, only they were slightly smaller. They had longer claws than any other Xeno, their physique was streamlined for speed, their tail barb was twice as long as any other Xeno, and their tail was slightly longer than the others. Naruto had labeled these as stalkers, since they tended to stay hidden for the most part and were antisocial among the other xenomorphs, preferring to remain isolated from the rest of the hive. He did not know what they had spawned from, but Naruto knew it had to come from something in the Forest of Death, seeing as the 2 xenomorph types were nowhere else in his subterranean hive. With curious eyes, Naruto watched as a pair of titans seemed to fighting one another, but they weren't aiming to kill one another. The other Xenos gave them a wide berth, not wanting to get involved in the fight. It is almost as if they are training, Naruto mused with a grin, watching as one titan slipped its tail underneath itself and between its legs, before pushing off of the ground with it, much like a springboard to attack the other titan from above. Not expecting it, the second titan was forced to jump back to avoid being crushed under the might of the first titan. But that done, their brawl continued, each one throwing curveballs at the other and keeping one another on their toes. The humans will never know what hit them when I released the hive on them. Naruto thought darkly as he turned away from the scene before deciding to take a walk through his hive and check up on everything. He and his team had a C-rank mission tomorrow, their first one, and Naruto figured it was about time to release his hive on the world above. Well, just a few of them, at least. 3 days later. Naruto narrowed his eyes at a puddle on the side of the road a short distance ahead of them. While it appeared to be a puddle to his team and their client, Naruto saw only 2 shinobi with clawed gauntlets. They were former Kirin, about chunin level to be exact, and known as the Demon Brothers, Maizu and Gaozu. Their genjutsu, like all others, were useless against him since Naruto didn't rely on his vision, the most common of only 2 or 3 ways to ensnare someone in a genjutsu. Waiting for them to spring their trap, Naruto slipped to the back of the group, leaving Kakashi to take point and Sasuke and Sakura to flank their client, Tazuna. Just as he planned, the demon brothers left their genjutsu and launched themselves at Naruto, intending to wrap him up in their bladed chain and tear him apart. Unfortunately, they did not expect a massive 12-foot black creature with horns to surge out of the forest and blindside the 2 of them, dragging them into the forest on the other side. This all happened before anyone could turn around to see what happened. Sakura and Tazuna spun around, fear etched on their faces. Sasuke had shock written all over him and suspicion. Kakashi was on alert and narrowed his singular eye at Naruto, who simply faked innocent. "What? Is there something on my face?" Naruto asked as he tilted his head slightly. Although his voice didn't give it away, he was grinning maniacally from behind his mask. The titan that had barreled into the 2 missing nin was now on its way to a temporary hive he had ordered to be set up in Wave Country, along with several more in other countries over a week ago. The convoy of roughly 50 drones, 50 warriors, 30 runners, 25 dragons, 10 titans, and 10 stalkers had already gone up ahead with a collection of eggs to stock up the secondary hive in Wave. While all he would get out of it would be more drones and warriors and runners, Naruto felt that more xenomorphs and more branch hives would make it easier on him. As they continued on, Naruto focused his attention on the person on the very edge of his senses. While he is able to track and follow things with impossible ease, Naruto knew of his limitations. The person, female, was just within his range of sight and he could not tell what her approximate skill level was. He mentally sighed as he knew it would be quite hard for him to track the girl down without a proper center idea of what she looked like. Sure, he could send some Xenos after her, preferably stalkers, since they were primarily combat trackers. That, however, would prove futile, since the stalkers would take a while just locating the girl's scent, since he only had a vague direction she was in, plus they would take an additional day tracking her down and reporting back to him. During that time, if she discovers she is being tracked, the girl will only move to a different location and cover her tracks more carefully. "Kami, you just had to fuck with me, didn't you?" Naruto mentally asked as he looked up at the sky, receiving a light breeze in return. "Crazy, blue-haired bitch always fucking with me for your own personal entertainment." Naruto sighed quietly again and stuffed his hands in his pockets. He now had to stay focused on the surrounding area, knowing that they were being watched by at least one person. He knew the demon brothers were not smart enough to come up with an ambush as good as it was, the chakra that fueled the genjutsu having had a different scent and feel to it than that of the brothers. That meant a third party had cast the genjutsu over them and had the pair lie in wait for their quarry. Another thing, the group would have no reason to kill Tazuna or any of them, but they were still trying. The thought of them just wanting their money or something occurred to him, but Kakashi was widely known for his skills and to attack Anyan near the man no doubt spelled out their doom. All in all, someone wanted either Tazuna or someone in his team dead, most likely Kakashi. This only brought up another question, who was hiding behind the curtains and pulling the strings? Growling quietly to himself, Naruto silently created a Kage Bunshin and had it take his place before vanishing. He had 2 chunin to question and he wanted to get to them before his xenomorphs let loose a pair of facehuggers on them. Naruto had questions and he wanted answers. Wiping his hands off with a black towel, Naruto walked away from the 2 bloodied and beaten men, both sporting facehuggers on their faces. Obviously. He had just finished interrogating the demon brothers and found out some interesting facts. Their employer was Gatu of Gatu Industries. Gatu wanted Tazuna dead, so the man couldn't finish building the bridge, and they worked with the demon of the bloody mist Mamachi's Zabuza and the man's apprentice Haku. Naruto saw the puzzle pieces finally fitting together. Gatu was the incarnation of greed and never liked spending his money. Wave Country was his most recent victim. Tazuna was building a bridge that would connect Wave Country with Fire Country, virtually usurping Gatu's control of Wave's import-export business and ruining the man's business on the island nation. In retaliation, Gatu hired Zabuza, the man's apprentice, and the demon brothers to kill Tazuna to make sure the bridge wasn't finished. Along with that, Gatu had his army of mercenaries and thugs harass the populace to keep them cowering in fear. The midget had even killed the one source of inspiration that gave the people of Wave courage. Had the midget not been interfering with his current mission, Naruto would commend the tyrannical tycoon for his economical domination and tactics in keeping Wave under his thumb. At least I will get plenty of resources out of this. Naruto muttered to himself as he adapted his plans to the new obstacle. Something he was going to take care of now. Snapping his fingers, the xenomorphs he had sent ahead with the eggs a week prior slowly stepped out of the shadows around him, filling the clearing with their black forms on the night of a new moon. Gatu and his thugs will prove quite bothersome if they are not tended to. In addition, Zabuza and his apprentice will become quite annoying in the coming days as well, but those two shall be left untouched for the time being. I might be able to convert them to our cause, and if not. Naruto trailed off with a vicious grin behind his mask, his hive having been left around his neck and showing the menacing gleam in his obsidian eyes. The stalker crept forward slightly, crouched low to the ground and hissing softly, lips curled in a snarl. Naruto chuckled at this. Yes, you can feed on their bodies, but only if they refuse my proposal and after they have been used to host 2 new hatchlings. Naruto's grin grew a bit behind his mask when he detected that girl again, the one he suspected to be Haku. Like before, she was just on the edge of his senses. None of his pets had detected. In 2 days, we will be reaching Wave Country, and when we do, we will take down Gato and his men. They should provide plenty of food and hosts for both the main and branch hives. Naruto continued, knowing the girl was too far away to hear anything he says. The Xenos before him gave hisses of approval and eagerness. This brought on a dark and low laugh from Naruto. We of the hive will rise again. And this time no pathetic human is going to put us down like rabid dogs. We shall show them what it means to anger the hive. To disturb the creatures that haunt their nightmares. Naruto hissed with mad glee, drawing brief shrieks and hisses from the eyeless creatures set out before him. Dismissed. Turning sharply, every last Xeno sped off into the shadows of the forest. Vanishing from his place, Naruto stepped out of a shadow no more than 10 feet behind the girl, unnoticed by said female. She had waist-length black hair held up in a bun with 2 thick bangs framing her face and wore a dark blue and beige battle kimono, Kiri in origin. She also wore black sandals and a beige obi wrapped around her waist. Figuring her to be about 15 or 16 and roughly 5'3" in height, Naruto knew she would be the perfect candidate for a second mate. Silently creeping up behind her, Naruto reached out with both arms to place her in a headlock meant to subdue her. Just as he came within arm's reach. Snap. The girl whirled around and leapt back, senbon held in her hands. Naruto mentally cursed, having stepped on a twig that alerted the girl. He also took notice of the girl's white hunter nin mask with a red swirl design on it and the Kiri insignia on the forehead of the mask. Fukuku so jumpy, Naruto taunted as he flexed his claws and relaxed his stance. The girl tensed and prepared to throw her senbon when Naruto raised his hands as a sign of neutrality. Sorry for startling you, miss. I didn't mean to sneak up on you like that. She bought his lie. Oh, she responded simply, lowering her arm slightly, but still on guard. And why exactly are you out here in the middle of the night? You caught me, Naruto laughed lightly in false nervousness, eye smiling. Then his face darkened and his eyes gained a menacing shimmer. I was out looking for some fresh meat. The next thing she knew, Haku had been struck on the back of her neck and everything went black. Stepping out of the shadows, Naruto nodded to his Kage Bunshin, which dispelled itself now that its purpose was done. Picking the girl up bridal style, Naruto started walking away. Oh, yeah, tonight was a good night. 2 days later. Naruto grinned as he sensed the presence of Zabuza growing farther and farther away. After interrogating Haku for a short time, though not as brutally as he did the demon brothers, Naruto found out what Zabuza was planning to do to catch them off guard. As such, he purposely exposed Zabuza without giving names and led Team 7 away from where the former Kiri Anbu planned to ambush them. As a reward for cooperating, Naruto let Haku live without being turned into a host for his Xenomorph. She was, however, still held prisoner in the branch hive in Wave 4 later. He wanted to perform an experiment and Haku would provide a wonderful test subject. He wondered what would happen if he performed the ritual on Haku and impregnated her. Would she survive the first litter and remain capable of birthing more Xenomorphs at a later time? Or would she die after giving birth? Maybe she would become the ultimate breeder and continuously birth countless Xenos much like the queen. A dark chuckle escaped his lips, something that went unnoticed by his team. The Banshee and the Bastard were annoying pests and the White Fanged Son was just as bad, if not worse. So far, the man had taught them practically nothing. Except for the arrogant little shit, Sasuke. Naruto didn't really care since he never saw any use in using ninjutsu when Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Kenjutsu, and stealth worked just as fine. Hell, what was the use of learning hundreds or thousands of ninjutsu when a simple kunai could kill someone just as easily? Having tamed QB's chakra since the ritual, Naruto's chakra control was on par, or so he believed, with that of Senjutsu no Day, the slug princess of Konoha. He could cast high-level layered genjutsu that could ensnare even the best of Anbu and Jounin back in Konoha, something he did for sport when he had nothing better to do. Plus, it provided a few good laughs to watch 2 Anbu mimic each other, as if they were looking in a mirror. His taijutsu was quite powerful, though with no definite style or form. It was more of an action-reaction kind of style, something that allowed him to adapt to any situation and remain unpredictable when in battle. As for Kenjutsu, he was not a master at it, but he viewed himself as good enough in the art form to protect himself quite well. Stealth was something he excelled in far more than any shinobi in history. It was also something he took great pride in. He kept tabs on everyone that had even the slightest amount of influence in anything. Civilian or shinobi matters, Naruto knew of everything that went on within Konoha. This included Danzo's route, the council, and even the Codex. The Codex was where every file was stored, its location being beneath the administration building, a place where only the Hokage could access. Or so they all thought. Though it required the sacrifice of a drone, Naruto had gained access to the Codex by digging a tunnel over to it and using the acidic qualities of xenomorph blood to melt through the 8-foot-thick steel walls. The place was only dimly lit by a handful of hanging lamps, leaving the ceiling veiled in shadow. Ergo, the 3-foot-wide hole in the ceiling was hidden and allowed Naruto to slip in and out unnoticed. He kept the hole closed off with a board coated in seals to keep any Hyuga from seeing through it or seeing the board itself. One collection of seals on the board hid it in a layered genjutsu, so it looked like the rest of the ceiling. This kept him from getting caught by anyone that enters the Codex who might notice the hole in the ceiling. Dismissing those thoughts, Naruto refocused his attention on the message a runner had relayed to him earlier that morning. Gato had received 3 new shipments of cargo, a contingent of over 300 more mercenaries, and tarp-covered cages that contained life forms his stalkers could not quite identify, but they suspected them too by human female slaves. None of this bothered him. In fact, it excited him. Most of the slaves would be used to host his new breed of xenomorphs, which have not yet been born, and the mercenaries would provide proper hosts for more drones and warriors. The slaves that aren't used to birth more Xenos would become his own slaves, not exactly for the same reasons that Gato had in mind, but mostly to provide services for any of his future human allies or something. While he may hate humans, Naruto knew that there would be at least a few humans worth allying with. Naruto? Kakashi asked as he walked over to the teen with a plate of food in one hand. Glancing at him, Naruto stared out over the ocean, his feet dangling over the side of the roof of Tezuna's home. You missed dinner and I figured you might be hungry. Here. That's quite fine, hot Aki, but I am not hungry. I already went hunting earlier. Naruto responded without looking at his sensei or the offered plate of food. Caught off guard by this, Kakashi simply nodded and went back inside. Naruto wasn't lying since he really had gone hunting, but not for game animal. He had gone hunting for human flesh. He, along with those of his hive, had acquired a taste for human meat some time back. Also, since they did not need to feed on a daily basis or require fresh foods, they always had an abundance of meat, fresh or decaying. While the Xenos didn't really care, Naruto preferred fresh meat since it didn't reek as bad as decaying flesh. Plus, it was usually juicier and more flavorful when fresh. Chuckling to himself, Naruto dropped down from the roof and darted away into the forest. Within a few minutes, Naruto was standing among his Xenos a short distance from Gato's mansion. Glancing at his Xenos, Naruto grinned and slipped into the shadows, the glossy black beasts trailing behind him. The hunt was on. Wave Country, Branch Hive. Haku glared into the darkness of her cave cell, whatever the hell it was. She had been taken prisoner by that masked person with the Konoha group, the creepy one with a blindfold. She got mixed signals every time she saw him and it interested her. It was why she followed him again the night she got captured. Fear and safety enveloped her every time she saw him. Fear of his power and dark aura. Safe when thinking of that same power shielding her from danger. Neither feeling was stronger than the other, but Haku felt a sort of rush, as it were, when she felt either one. Then there was those creatures of his. Their black eyeless visages frightened her slightly, but none of them did anything to harm her. Oddly enough, a couple of them had even taken a liking to her, or so she believed. It was hard to tell with them. A hiss off to the side snapped her out of her thoughts before a great horned creature stepped out of the shadows and into the faint light of the cavern, which was provided by a very small hole in the ceiling that led outside. It was no more than maybe 2 or 3 inches wide. The creature stood at roughly 3 meters with a tail just as long, wicked claws gracing its fingers, a vicious barb on the end of its tail, mighty horns on the side of its head, and a broad crest on its head much like a crown. It dropped a bundle in front of her and quickly left the chamber. Reaching out hesitantly, Haku pulled it towards her and unwrapped it. Inside the cloth bundle, she found what looked like a ceremonial knife with flat rectangular teeth serrating the knife's wavy edges. The handle was wrapped in black leather, and what looked like a fang hung from the pommel on a piece of wire. Beside the knife was a small clay bowl that had a reddish tinge to it on the inside, an unusual black stone vial with some kind of black skin placed over the opening, and there was also a small scroll. Pulling out the scroll and unfurling it, Haku read its message and gasped in shock, eyes wide as she continued reading. She couldn't fathom it. Her captor wanted her to. A shudder ran through her body as she remembered what the young man had told her. Do as I say and you live. If not, you will be disposed of slowly and painfully. However, there will come a time in next day or two where you will have to make a decision. What you decide will reflect on your future, so choose wisely. Those words still echoed in her mind. A small part of her brain noted that the young man hadn't given away any information about himself or his pets, nor what his intentions were. She silently went over the pros and cons of doing what the scroll said. If she did it, she would live longer than she had originally predicted, but she had no idea what this would do to her. If she didn't, Haku was quite sure she would be disposed of. Haku shivered slightly as a cold chill ran up her spine at that thought. She took a shaky breath as she reached for the knife and picked it up. Stealing her resolve, Haku made her decision. Naruto mentally grinned in twisted satisfaction as he left the mansion in ruins, slowly reverting back to his human form. Stashed in a pocket was a small storage scroll containing 3 more scrolls, large ones that held everything he had taken from Gatu's mansion. The 3 scrolls were divided into 3 categories: money, documents, and other. As their names denote, the money and document scrolls contained money and various files respectively. The other scroll contained anything Naruto found useful or interesting, most of which being ancient or unique weapons and technology stashed in the midget's vault. He suddenly froze in place and his eyes glazed over. The Xenos he was with had froze in mid-step as well, all of them seeming to be in some sort of trance. After a few moments, they appeared to be freed of that trance before they continued on their path. Naruto grinned darkly as he felt the new presence in his mind. So she agreed, good. Now it will only be a matter of time before I can breed a new caste of Xenomorphs. Naruto thought darkly, his plan slowly falling into place with ease. While Kira was his main mate and already pregnant, she had not performed the ritual, simply because there was no need for it. Haku, on the other hand, did, and as such, Naruto had a feeling he was soon going to be awarded 2 new castes, instead of the original one he was going to get from Kira and the other human females he had impregnated. A shiver of excitement ran laps up and down his spine at that thought. The only thing he found disappointing in the process of increasing his hive's numbers his way was that it took the normal 9 months of gestation in a female womb to properly grow. Then again, that particular downside was outweighed by the several dozen Xenos birthed all at once. Following the Xenos to one of the many tunnels that led to and from the branch hive, Naruto made his way to where he could sense Haku was at. Not long after she had performed a ritual on herself thanks to the instructions he had given her, Haku had quickly become accustomed to her new abilities and appearance before wandering a little. At the moment, she was near the main chamber where most of the Xenos stay when they are not needed. Silently approaching her from behind as he dispelled the henge he had over himself, Naruto took in her appearance, already knowing that the young woman knew he was there. He saw that her kimono top was torn apart during the transformation, leaving her in only the cloth wrappings around her chest. The lower half of her attire, while a little ragged, was still in good condition, and he could see that she had ditched her shoes. Trailing down her spine were several black plates of bony armor that led to her long and black tail, which was identical to every other Xeno tail, and measured out to be roughly 6 feet long, with a foot-long spike on the tip. 4 dorsal tubes stuck out from her upper back, much like those sticking out of the backs of other Xenomorphs. Her black hair had become naturally glossy much like his own hair, her originally creamy skin complexion had lightened to an even paler shade, her fingers were now adorned with long and sharp black claws, her ears were pointed, her muscles were compact and dense, and her lithe figure had become more womanly. Her hips had widened, her legs were long and muscular, her rear was plump and meaty yet still firm, and her breasts were fuller and plumper G-cups by the looks of them. She now stood at around 5'10", and her hair fell down to her hips. When Haku turned her head to look at him over her shoulder, Naruto saw that her eyes were just like his, solid black with silvery slit pupils, along with the same black fang tattoos on her cheeks much like him, and he noticed her canine teeth were much longer and sharper than before. She smiled softly at him before turning to approach him, giving him clear view of her chest and smooth stomach as she slowly walked towards him. Stopping a couple feet in front of him, Haku wrapped her tail loosely around her hips and crossed her arms under her bosom, smirking seductively at him. That he still had morals, Naruto was sure he would be blushing fiercely and struggling not to stare at the woman's assets. However, he had no such morals and openly looked her up and down. Haku let him, the ritual having altered her mind and personality a fraction to better suit her Xenomorph half, something that Naruto hadn't undergone since he had no qualms with their ways of doing things. All the ritual did to him, mentally, was remove all inhibitions he might have and alter his behavior a fraction due to his Xeno half. "See anything you like, milord?" Haku asked in a regal tone, something Naruto noticed immediately. He then smirked behind his mask, realizing why. He had used the queen's blood for Haku's ritual to keep Haku's Xeno half pure, but he now knew that Haku had gained the ability to reproduce Xeno offspring much like himself in a way, and had gained a slightly more aristocratic personality. "Actually I do," Naruto replied as he pulled his mask down, revealing his tattooed cheeks and sharp fangs as he smirked. Haku stepped closer and pressed her full chest against Naruto's, looking him straight in the eye with that same seductive smirk. Her slitted eyes gleamed with lust and Naruto could smell her arousal. "Oh?" she questioned in mock curiosity, deciding to tease her new master and king a little. Placing her hands on his shoulders as she unwound her tail from around her waist, Haku pressed closer. "And what might that be?" Naruto chuckled lightly and leaned down, his breath tickling her ears slightly. "You?" he whispered huskily. His smirk grew slightly as Haku shivered in pleasure and moaned softly, biting her lips gently as she leaned heavily against her king. Wrapping his arms around the woman's waist, Naruto pulled her closer and sucked on her neck gently, drawing out another soft moan as Haku tilted her head to the side. Forget teasing him." Haku struggled to string together a single coherent sentence in her mind, which was growing clouded and foggy with lust and pleasure. "I want him and I want him now." Wrapping her arms around Naruto's neck, Haku relaxed against him and moaned again when she felt his hands grip her rear and lift her up, prompting Haku to wrap her legs around Naruto's waist. He groaned softly when Haku started rubbing against him. Knowing that if he didn't take this somewhere more private, the two of them would only end up doing it right there pretty soon. Shunshining away with Haku in his arms, Naruto went to his den here in the branch hive, and he did not plan on coming out anytime soon. He was glad he had left a Kage Bunshin in his place back with his team and Tazuna. 3 days later. Stretching slightly as he neared Tazuna's home, Naruto figured it was about time he at least tried to socialize with his team. Where the hell is Naruto no Baka? On second thought, fuck them. Naruto turned on his heel without batting an eye and walked away. He almost felt sorry for his now that he thought about it, where the hell was his clone? He had left it with his team and Tazuna just after he finished up with Haku this morning. Boom. Turning to look in the direction of the sound, Naruto watched as a tree fell. Curious as to what caused it, Naruto leapt into the trees and sped off in search of the cause. It took no more than a minute or two, but when he got there, he answered 2 questions at the same time. He found his clone, and he found the cause of the tree collapsing. Deciding to watch what his clone was doing, Naruto stood still on the tree branch. The clone noticed him, but didn't react and got back to its training. Channeling chakra into its right arm, the clone punched forward and launched a rapid-moving projectile of gray-black chakra at a tree. In an instant, the chakra missile traveled a little over 100 meters in less than a second before impacting a tree, then through it and 15 others behind it before fizzling out. Eyes wide with excitement, Naruto dispelled the clone and summoned roughly 1,000 more. You all know what to do. Receiving nods of acknowledgement, they all got to work on chakra control and refining the attack the first clone had been working on. He motioned for one clone to come over to him. I want you to go back to Tazuna's and stay with the team. If anyone asks where you've been, just tell them you were doing some light training. Don't take any shit from them. Dismissed. Nodding once, the clone shunshined away. Naruto sighed and ran a hand through his hair before grinning again. That attack was quite powerful, but unrefined and crude. He couldn't wait to see how powerful it would be once he refines and improves it. Then he wondered if he could actually do it. Turning toward a tree, Naruto gathered chakra in his right forearm like the clone had downed and thrust his fist forward. To his satisfaction, the meter-wide missile surged forward and bowled through over 24 trees, dissolving everything it touched before evaporating. He smirked victoriously and started walking away. I think it is about time I pay Zabuza a visit. He would no doubt want to know what happened, his apprentice Naruto mused out loud before stepping into the shadows and vanishing. A few miles away, Naruto stepped out of the shadows and approached the suspended hideout the man was hiding in. Leaping up onto one of the cables, Naruto peered into one of the windows and saw that Zabuza was sharpening his massive zanbatsu. The blade caught his attention, and Naruto knew it would be a great boon for him and his steadily growing army of Xenomorphs. Maybe I can convert him over to my side like I did with Haku, he wondered silently, knowing he shouldn't use his or the queen's blood for the ritual. If Zabuza did join and accepted the ritual, there was still the risk that his mind might be too strong to succumb to the mind-altering effects. Haku hadn't been able to fight it off at all when she performed the ritual on herself, and he knew why. During the brief interrogation he performed on her, Haku had told him that while she traveled with a man who had killed hundreds, she herself had killed no one. Killing was much like torture. The more you kill, the more you get used to it. The more you're tortured, the higher your pain tolerance is, and the harder it is to make you break. Praetorian or Titan blood should do. The transformation should be no different than mine or Haku's, but he should at least become inclined to protect me and Haku. I can't risk giving him the ability to breed more Xenomorphs if the mind alteration doesn't work and he ends up betraying me one day. I can't have that happening. Naruto mentally planned out before leaping to the roof, landing silently. Crawling over to a hatch in the roof, Naruto decided to be careful and took out a kunai before using the sharp edge to pull out the hinges. He couldn't risk alerting the man to his presence, or else he was pretty much screwed. While he knew that he could take down Zabuza, Naruto wanted to avoid killing the man due to the added power the former Kiri Anbu would bring to the hive should he join. Picking the lock, Naruto moved the hatch over before slipping into the attic. There were no lights on, but Naruto could still see perfectly fine. Sneaking through the house, he approached the room he saw Zabuza in, but he knew something was wrong when he didn't hear the sound of a whetstone rubbing against metal. Silently cursing himself, Naruto ducked just in time to avoid the massive blade that would have no doubt taken his head off had he not moved. Rolling away, Naruto stayed crouched down on all fours as he spun around to face Zabuza, said man tearing his sword free of the wall with one arm. Naruto gave himself a mental kick in the pants since he had forgotten to suppress his chakra as much as possible since the man before him hunted shinobi by hearing and chakra sensing when using his Kurigakure technique. Who are you and what do you want? Zabuza growled as he brandished his mighty blade again. He knew he was at a disadvantage already. Kubikiri Haucho was too big to be used properly inside enclosed areas, such as the room they were in now. Whoever this man was, he was good. Almost too good. Zabuza hadn't heard or seen the man at all, and he only knew of this assassin's presence because he barely detected the cloaked man's chakra a minute ago. Who I am is of no concern. As for why I'm here, it's just to talk. I have no wish to fight you, Mamachi Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist. Naruto replied, still crouched down. Zabuza smirked as he heard his title. So you've know of my reputation. Then that must mean you know you have no chance against. Do not think my hesitance to fight you has anything to do with your reputation. I do not want to fight you because I want to talk to you. Naruto cut in and explained as he let his killing intent flood the room momentarily, causing Zabuza to nearly collapse to his knees in an instant. I have more physical strength alone than you can produce in any way. What the hell do you want? Zabuza growled, now gently hesitant to do battle with the man before him. The killing intent alone had nearly suffocated him and forced him to his knees. That coupled with one decisive blow, Zabuza knew he would be dead in moments. I want to offer you the chance to join me. Your apprentice, Haku, has already joined me. Just keep in mind that my offer is merely out of generosity. I can do without you or your strength. However, I am sure Haku would appreciate it if I at least extended the offer to her mentor to join. Fuck you and fuck her. I take orders from nobody. I was planning on getting rid of the bitch anyways. Zabuza snarled as he raised his sword once again. Naruto bowed his head slightly and his claws dug into the floor. Haku will be saddened to hear that, Naruto whispered. Goodbye, Zabuza. In a blur of motion, Naruto barreled straight into Zabuza and forced him through a wall. Landing lightly on his feet, Naruto tossed his cloak aside, revealing that he wasn't wearing his shirt or body armor. As Zabuza slowly started to regain his bearings and drag himself out of the crater he was in, Naruto started to transform while dropping his mask and hit I-8 to the ground. Black bony plates covered his spinal column, 4 dorsal tubes stuck out of his upper back, a long and black tail with a sharp foot-long barb on the end grew out from the base of his spine, all of his teeth became razor sharp, and his claws grew longer. Crouching down again, Naruto let out a quiet hiss as his tail slowly swayed back and forth, with the barbed tip raised and aimed at Zabuza. Without warning, Naruto lunged at the man with the intent to shred the man, but Zabuza managed to dodge and land a scratch on Naruto's left bicep, causing his blood to squirt out and land on the flat side of Kubikiri Haucho from one side to the other. Naruto saw this and grinned viciously when his blood started melting through the sword. It would have been useless to him without Zabuza wielding it anyways. Said blade's wielder heard the sizzling and looked at his sword, only to curse upon seeing that Naruto's blood had already melted halfway through. Dropping his fist on the blade, Naruto snapped it in two and kicked Zabuza in the chest, throwing the man several meters away. Before Zabuza even hit the ground or righted himself, Naruto appeared above him and kicked him in the chest again with both feet, smashing the man into the ground. As the dust settled, Naruto casually approached the unconscious man and kneeled beside him before checking his vitals, finding him to still be among the living. Not surprising since he had pulled his punches with the man. He then took the time to disarm him and bind him with wire. He then summoned a Kage Bunshin before changing back into his human form. Take him to the branch hive and lock him up in one of the purgatory cells. I'll give him one last chance to change his mind. Naruto ordered as he put his cloak back on along with his mask and hit I-8. He still had 5 days left in Wave Country and he had plenty of things to do during that time frame. One of which was setting up those unusual portals he had found among the things he took from Gatu's vault. Naruto growled quietly to himself as he stepped through the gates of Konoha with his team. He hated being near them. He kept himself on autopilot whenever he was around them, something he was doing now as he waited for them to be dismissed by the Sandaime. When he did, Kakashi vanished via Shunshin, Sasuke and Sakura left through the door, and Naruto took a seat. What can I? Sarutobi was cut off when Naruto performed a pair of hand seals before the room glowed a faint blue for a moment. Instantly, Sarutobi's happy mood turned serious. There was only 3 times in the past when Naruto activated the privacy seal in his office. The first time was when Itachi, Naruto's first sensei and surrogate brother, had gone rogue, and the second time was. The hawk is gossiping with the white snake again. Naruto hissed cryptically. Sarutobi knew what the team meant. Danzo was trading village secrets with Orochimaru. Again. Scowling, Sarutobi pinched the bridge of his nose to fight off the coming migraine. What is it this time? Anbu patrol routes and times, shift changes, guard posts, etc. Naruto explained vaguely as he dropped a thick file in front of the Sandaime. Mostly security information, but it's stuff for the next 7 months, and you know what's happening in 7 months. Sarutobi paled at that before he flushed with anger. Oh, how he wished he could rid himself of Danzo. That crippled warmonger has been a thorn in his side for decades. Were it not for the lack of actual evidence against the man, Sarutobi would have done so the moment he had the chance. Naruto, on the other hand. Naruto, I want to erase the hawk and his flock, the Sandaime ordered as he looked through the file before him, his ire growing with every line he read and picture he viewed. Naruto grinned darkly behind his mask, knowing exactly what the elderly Hokage meant. And I want it done by midnight tonight. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. Of course, sir. It will be my pleasure, he purred darkly as he deactivated the seal. Now, on to other business. I want to remove myself from Team 7 and work solo. Don't worry about a vacancy in Team 7. Now that I'm taking care of a mutual annoyance, I can supply you with one of my few human allies. He's quite skilled and will take my place on Team 7. Oh? And why would you want to leave Team 7 in the first place? Sarutobi questioned as he closed and sealed the file away in a special seal on his left wrist, which contained the most important of things he could not risk falling into the wrong hands. The bitch won't shut up, the bastard thinks he's the king, and the Asnifer doesn't give a damn about anything. In addition to that, the Asnifer hasn't taught me or the bitch anything except that stupid tree climbing exercise, while he teaches just about everything to the bastard. What more of a reason do I need? Naruto growled as he started flexing his claws, a little irritated at having to deal with useless teammates that didn't give a damn about him. Sighing, Sarutobi found that he could not fault the cloak team's reasoning, already knowing which nickname belonged to which teammate. I see. Very well, Naruto-kun. Get the job done and I'll grant your request. Sarutobi answered as he waved Naruto away and got back to his paperwork. Naruto nodded and left the office. He grinned darkly behind his mask as he walked away and soon vanished in the shadows of an alley. Reappearing on the balcony overlooking the central cavern housing a great majority of Xenos, which he had come to call the Death's Throne due to the concentration of the hive. Everything in a Xenomorph's life cycle is a representation of death. Even their birth is celebrated with blood and death. As such, Naruto found it fitting to call the cavern before him Death's Throne. Kira and even the queen agreed with his reasons. Dismissing those thoughts, Naruto leaned against the stone guardrail he had carved from the very rock that surrounds them, Death's Throne having been dug out by him and many drones. Sarutobi knew of the hive, but he had still left the old monkey in the dark about almost everything about the Xenos. All the Sandaime knew was that they were the perfect assassins, and that Naruto had horde upon horde of Xenomorphs. A few white lies and a cover story kept the old monkey from worrying about Naruto using his pets to raise Konoha. Gather the banshees. Naruto ordered a nearby runner as he started walking away from Death's Throne. We have work to do. Silently slinking away, the runner left to do as it was ordered. Naruto idly realized that he used runners mostly for relaying orders within and between the main and branch hives, as of late. Then again, runners weren't all that powerful and were more suited for sabotage, espionage or as cannon fodder. Still, they were just as capable as warriors, but faster than their bipedal counterparts. As for the banshees. Here already? Naruto asked rhetorically with a smirk as he continued walking, a group of 20 unique Xenos trailing behind him. They were all of the same caste, one that was even more antisocial and solitary than even stalkers, though tight-knit among their own caste. They were very thin, almost skeletal when compared to other Xenos, though no bigger than warriors in height, with wing-like appendages attached to their forearms that folded up when not in flight. Their hands had 3 finger-like appendages on each with sharp talon-like claws on them, their tails were thin and short, their feet had only 2 long talon-equipped appendages, they had a few feathery quills on either side of their cylindrical skulls, they lacked any dorsal tubes like runners. Their chins were pointed more forward than any other Xeno with a rudder-like crest attached to their bottom jaw, and their wingspan was easily 20 feet from wingtip to wingtip. When on land, they walked on their knuckles, hands and feet so that their talons weren't caught on anything, broken, or dulled. Again, Naruto had no idea what the banshees spawned from, but he knew it was a bird of prey or something close to it for 3 reasons. A. Banshees were the only kind of Xenos he and even the queen knew of that could fly. B. They were given the name Banshee for their unique ability to let out a shrill cry that was capable of deafening prey temporarily. C. Their bones were hollowed out and lightweight much like avian bones. He idly wondered if he could get a banshee from his pink-haired teammate, but dismissed the thought when he pictured a bubblegum pink banshee. Scary thought. This is a search and capture mission. You are to raid Danzo's base here in Konoha and take one root Anbu each and bring them back here. Alive. After that, you are to return to Danzo's base and repeat the process as many times as needed. I will be arriving there shortly myself with reinforcements. Dismissed. With what sounded like shrill chirps, the banshee slipped out of the hive via an immense tunnel that led through the ground and up to the surface. Zipping out of the openings at great speeds, the banshees made their way to where Danzo's base was located. As they did, Naruto performed 3 hand seals before disappearing in a cloud of white smoke, signifying the use of a self-summoning. Reappearing just outside of Danzo's base, Naruto bit his thumb and performed 5 more hand seals. Uchiha no jutsu. Naruto whispered as he pressed his hand to the ground. When the smoke cleared, his summons could be seen standing. 5 dozen warriors and runners, 3 dozen titans, 3 dozen stalkers, 2 dozen praetorians, and a dozen dragons. Giving them similar orders as the banshees, Naruto sent them on their way and slowly followed after them. Dragons. A shudder ran through him at the thought of the creatures. If he had to choose between the current castes of Xenomorphs, Naruto would always say that the dragon caste were the most dangerous and temperamental of the hive. Dragons, while serpentine, had 2 sets of arms like the queen that they used to pull themselves along or rip their prey apart and large claws on their hands. Their jaws were the largest of all Xenos, capable of biting an average adult male human in half in one go. They also had the toughest hide that not even the horns of a titan or praetorian could pierce. While placid and lethargic most of the time, dragons became bloodthirsty, feral, and vicious when angered. When hunting alone, it is difficult to anger one, but when they are hunting in packs, all it would take is to simply attack one of them to set them off. After that, nothing short of himself, Kira, Haku, and/or the queen could calm them. Luckily, dragons could still tell friend from foe even in their blood rage. Hearing a shriek of fury, Naruto groaned and just knew that at least one of the dragons had been set off. It had only been a couple minutes and they were already pissed. Heaving an exasperated sigh, Naruto just knew that his original estimated number of possible hosts just dropped considerably. Drawing one of his ninjados, Naruto stalked through the empty halls of the crippled councilman's root headquarters. The next few hours flew by as he and his Xenos scoured the base for any root members they might have missed. The banshees he had sent in advance had closed off all escape routes, and another 30 scouted the forests within a 20-mile radius of Konoha for any root Anbu that might have been out of the village when the Silent War began. 6 months have passed, and today was the beginning of the chunin exams. Since the day he raided Danzo's base, Naruto had gathered a collection of allies all throughout Konoha, 2 new castes of Xenos, and new technology. His allies remained hidden amongst Konoha's shinobi ranks and civilian populace. The first caste came from Kira, who had given birth to roughly 100 new Xenomorphs last week, the second caste coming from the root Anbu he had captured 6 months back, being placed in special cocoons that forcibly changed them into Xenomorphs. As for the technology, he had stumbled upon a spaceship that once belonged to the natural enemy of the Xenomorphs, the uchiha, also known as predators. Luckily, the predators that once manned the ship had died long ago, but Naruto wasn't sure if they were the only ones on the planet. Naruto had since moved the ship and its contents to the main hive and was now working on repairing the predator ship for his personal use in the future. He had also used some of the predator technology to upgrade his cloak and swords. He was wearing baggy dark gray and black camouflage pants, an armored cloak made up of hundreds of thousands of metal centimeter-sized scales, coating the outside of a specially made lightweight cloak, with black fur lining the inside, the scales having been painted in a dark gray and black camouflage scheme. He still wore his hit-8 around his head like a blindfold, but he no longer wore his black armored face mask. Strapped vertically to his back parallel with his spine were his upgraded ninjado swords with the handles at the bottom, and his kunai pouches were still present on his thighs. Naruto had also decided to forget about his old Anbu body armor, bracers, and shirt since he always wound up taking them off in a battle anyways. Naruto was drawn out of his thoughts when Team 7 entered the room, drawing the attention of everyone in the room with their usual flair, arrogance. Team 8 and 10 approached them and they all started chatting away, which Naruto ignored before he heard his old arrogant teammate ask a silver-haired teen about a couple particular genin participating in the chunin exams, Naruto's name included. Naruto quietly approached the other rookies just as the silver-haired teen named Kabuto pulled out another of his cards. This one just happened to be on Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto, this year's Rookie of the Year, has killed over 500 people, has completed 14 D rank missions, 23 C rank missions, 15 B rank missions, 7 A rank missions, and 9 S rank missions. Kabuto exclaimed, causing all nearby genin to stare at Naruto in shock. Sasuke, on the other hand, was glaring at the teen venomously, jealous of Naruto's power. Said Havzino noticed this and knew that Sasuke was going to be quite easy to control in battle. He is without a doubt the most dangerous genin here, though it appears he is without a team. Naruto smirked at this when he smelled the thick aroma of fear radiating off of the genin he graduated with and even those of other countries. His thoughts were interrupted when a scarred special jounin he recognized as Marino Ibiki appeared in a cloud of smoke with a dozen or so chunins. Ignoring them, Naruto simply took a seat and sat there. Thanks to his informants, Naruto already knew what to expect from the chunin exams. He also knew how to beat the system. Crossing his arms over his chest, Naruto leaned back in his chair and propped his feet up on the table. He knew he could get this done faster than anyone here, but Naruto had no motivation to do so. He just wished the second exam would start soon. It had been a while since he had been on a free-for-all hunt. Naruto sighed audibly as the three Iwa genin before him were taken away by a pair of titans. They had thought that because he was alone, they had the advantage. If there was one thing for certain about him, it was that Naruto was never alone. Especially not in the forest of death where his hive thrives the most. He moved to jump into the trees and continue with his hunt, but something within him told him different. Not far from him was someone similar to him and they were in trouble. Quickly summoning a pair of Praetorians, they took off into the forest in the presence's direction. Not a moment later, he burst into the clearing, coming upon the sight of a blonde Kumo Kunoichi tied up with her clothes ripped apart. The girl's teammates, both male Kumo shinobi, were both preparing to HSSSSS. Naruto hissed as he slowly reverted to his Xenomorph side while removing his cloak and hit I-8, the Praetorians having stayed out of sight for now. They knew when to stay out of their king's way. The dorsal tubes grew out from his upper back, the black armor plates appeared along his spine, his barb-tipped tail grew to its full length, his claws grew longer and sharper, his teeth became razor sharp, and his rage neared its limit. While he may capture men and women of all ages to host his Xenomorphs, Naruto absolutely loathed rapists. The women he captures and impregnates are for the good of the hive, not sick and twisted self-entertainment, by raping innocent young women, such as the bound and gagged blonde Kunoichi at the feet of her two teammates. In Naruto's eyes, rapists were unfit to host Xenomorphs. They weren't even fit to be fed on by his hive. What the hell are you? One of the Kumo shinobi exclaimed as he brandished his katana, the other arming himself with a pair of ninjato. Naruto didn't answer, all he saw was red. Charging at speeds neither Kumo-nin could track, Naruto grabbed them by their necks and pinned them to the ground. Then, with a swift strike from his tail, the katana user was stabbed through the skull. The other one had his neck broken with a single squeeze and flick of the wrist by Naruto, with the one hand on the Kumo-nin's throat. Standing up and leaving the two corpses, Naruto gave the Praetorians a mental command to return to the hive. Walking over to the bound Kunoichi, Naruto used a claw to cut through the wire, used to tie her up before removing the cloth the two dead Kumo shinobi had used to gag her. She cowered in fear and tried to crawl away from him, only to freeze when she felt a cloak dropped on top of he, covering her half-naked figure. Looking up, the Kunoichi saw the man who saved her walking away. "Wait." She called out, not really knowing why she did. Stopping in mid-step and looking over his shoulder, Naruto waited for the girl to continue. "Ano, what's your name?" "Uzumaki Naruto." He replied, not bothering to hide his features anymore at the moment. "You?" "Nai-Ujito," she answered as she slowly got to her feet, the cloak wrapped around her lithe frame. Despite himself, Naruto couldn't help looking at Ujito's figure. Long legs, muscular thighs, wide hips, a plump and shapely rear, slim waist, full and supple E-cup breasts, and lightly tanned skin. She was roughly 5'5" with blonde hair that went past her shoulder blades and deep sapphire eyes. "And can I go with you?" Ujito asked hesitantly as she stared down at the ground, standing no more than a few feet away from Naruto, clutching the cloak to her frame tightly. "Alright," Naruto sighed as he rubbed the back of his neck. He was a bit irritated that he had to drag her around with him, but Naruto wasn't so inhuman to just leave a defenseless woman behind after such a traumatic experience. "But I'm not going to the tower just yet, and I'm not going to hold your hand, either." "Thank you." Ujito beamed shyly as she hugged Naruto for a moment before releasing him, blushing fiercely as she did. Eyebrow twitching, Naruto walked away with Ujito trailing behind him, her head held low. He may not show it, but Naruto knew that the blonde female following him was a Jinchuriki, a demon container. He himself, while not actually containing Kira anymore, still had 7 out of Kira's 9 tails sealed inside him, though the redhead had access to them, should she need them. As to which Biju Ujito contained within her, Naruto did not know. He did know that if he played his cards just right, he would gain another ally and possibly a new mate. With a quiet sigh, Naruto dismissed those thoughts and motioned for Ujito to keep up before he jumped into the mighty tree limbs of the Forest of Death, hunting for more genin teams to remove from the exam. It was only 5 hours into the first day, and Naruto had already eliminated 11 out of the original 26 teams. More than 4 days left and 15 teams to go. He remained unaware of the hidden presence stalking him from high above in the trees. 4 days later. Naruto growled softly and ran a hand through his hair in irritation, his hit eye covering his eyes once again. Despite his best efforts to eliminate the competition and avoid it, he was still stuck with these damn preliminaries. 22 genin excluding himself had survived to make it to the preliminaries, team 7 through 10 from Konoha, Kabuto's team, a team from Suna, a team from Sound, and only one member from Itachi team stayed while his teammates quit. He hated the fact he had failed to eliminate the competition. And it was all because that damn white snake had bit him. Kami, he hated humans. Sighing, Naruto knew he had to either make himself a new cloak or track down that Yujito girl who he had left at the clinic in the building to get checked out and take his cloak back. Either way, it was a pain in the ass for him. On the other hand, he didn't really need it right now since he still had his Xenomer features visible and he didn't really care anymore. At least this way, fear will definitely play a role in his matches. Speaking of which. Uzumaki Naruto vs Ikushi Kabuto. Smirking smugly, Kabuto walked down to the arena floor while Naruto did the same, only looking rather bored. Kabuto had been ordered by Orochimaru to stay in the chunin exams to see how Naruto reacted to his cursed seal, which took on the image of a tri-bladed shuriken in the center of his chest. What confused Kabuto and completely stumped Orochimaru was the fact that Naruto wasn't experiencing any of the usual side effects of having the cursed seal applied. He hadn't been knocked out initially by the bite, he didn't experience a fever, he wasn't in pain. Orochimaru couldn't even feel the mild bond with the cursed seal like all of the others he had marked in the past. What the white snake and his spy didn't know was that Naruto's acidic blood had dissolved enough of the venom used to create the cursed seal that Naruto was unaffected by Orochimaru's influence. However, the seal still acted like the others without eating away at his free will and subconscious. Uzumaki Naruto vs Ikushi Kabuto. Hajime. Hayate called out before leaping back, coughing lightly. Deciding to test his opponent's skills by making the first move, Kabuto formed a pair of chakra scalpels and charged Naruto. Said teen simply smirked and ducked under the first swing before throwing a punch to Kabuto's gut that was strong enough to launch the spy all the way to the other side of the arena, slamming him against the wall. The initial impact of his fist had been light, but Naruto had incorporated his chakra missile technique with his taijutsu a couple months back, allowing him to multiply his strength tenfold by generating a thin shield of chakra over his fist, knee, elbow, foot, etc. and fire it upon impacting the desired target. This greatly multiplied the damage caused by the strike due to the increased velocity granted by the chakra shield missile. What he gave Kabuto was a simple love tap compared to what he could truly dish out with the technique, but it was still lethal. In addition to its offensive capabilities, Naruto was able to create a defense with it that could withstand far more than any man-made armor could. As the dust cleared, Kabuto could be seen on his hands and knees, hacking up blood and clutching his stomach with one hand. Hayate was about to declare Naruto the winner, but said teen let his killing intent flare to warn the jounin not to interrupt his match. Walking over to the internally injured teen, Naruto used his tail to wrap around Kabuto's wrist so tightly that both joints were crushed simultaneously. Arg. Kabuto howled in pain as his arms were raised above his head and he was lifted off of his feet by Naruto's tail alone. Laughing at the traitor's affliction, Naruto summoned a large amount of chakra into his right forearm before punching Kabuto in the chest and unleashing the missile. Instantly, Kabuto's body from the shoulders down was disintegrated, blood pouring from the silver-haired teen's remains. The chakra missile had disintegrated the stone in its path as well, leaving a meter-wide and 2-foot-deep crater, which the blood was now pooling inside of. He had no need of the traitor. The other genin became green in the face, and the more experienced shinobi in the room weren't far behind. The only ones unaffected by Naruto's brutal slaughtering of a comrade were Subaku no Gaara, Orochimaru, and the Sandaime. Gaara was grinning madly with a psychotic gleam of bloodlust in his teal eyes. Orochimaru stared at Naruto in both shock and awe at managing to kill his second in command. The Sandaime was unaffected simply because he knew of Naruto's connection with the Xenomorph hive and their brutality. Winner. Uzumaki Naruto Hayate declared hesitantly and nearly lost his lunch when Naruto dropped Kabuto's remains in the crater, a sick squelch quickly following. Luckily, the black-haired teen performed a powerful yet nameless Kaiten technique to incinerate the half-corpse. Turning around and walking back up to the balcony he had been on earlier, Naruto couldn't help grinning at the miasma that flooded the room. Fear. Humming to a stop beside teammate, Naruto leaned against the railing. He ignored the looks he got from everyone and simply waited for when he would have to fight again. Naruto already knew that the members of the council, who hid in another room, had chosen the matches and were now watching them. He could only hope that the civilian council's hatred of him would pit him against their beloved Uchiha-sama, who still had yet to fight. Then Naruto will show the arrogant bastard the true meaning of pain and fear. And the true meaning of power. Growling ominously, the figure watched through the window as her chosen prey slaughtered his opponent with powers beyond the limitations of other humans she had encountered before in the past. Yes, he would make a great trophy. What bothered her were the black protrusions on her prey's back. They looked much like those on the black serpents her kind have hunted for ages for their trials. If they were here on this planet and uncontrolled. Growling again, she turned away and leapt into the trees, her invisibility cloak veiling her from sight as she left in search of any evidence that the black serpents are here. Yawning out of boredom, Naruto ignored the matches playing out before him until he saw his name appear on the electric board again. Sighing softly, Naruto made his way down to the arena floor, mentally cursing Kami yet again for ruining his plans. Especially when it came to the Uchiha. Uzumaki Naruto vs Rock Lee. Naruto grinned darkly at the green-clad Taijutsu specialist, who, despite his usual boisterous and confident attitude, was being rather quiet and was inwardly hesitant to fight the teen. Even though he was training under a Taijutsu master and was among the best in Taijutsu in their generation, Lee knew he was no match against Naruto. The blindfolded teen was in an entirely different league. Uzumaki Naruto vs Rock Lee. Hajime. Hayate announced and jumped back, silently pitying Lee for being pitted against the inhuman juggernaut that is Naruto. Lee instantly got into a Taijutsu stance. Naruto simply stood there, baring his fangs and sharp teeth with a vicious grin. "Are you sure you want to fight me, Lee?" Naruto asked as he tilted his head to the side and slumped forward, his arms dangling limply at his sides. Orochimaru, disguised as the Sound Team's Jounin sensei, winced and unconsciously put a hand on his left shoulder. Naruto had been in that same stance when he was interrupted and stopped from giving the Uchiha the cursed seal, which the snake summoner could only perform once every 5 days due to the strain it puts on him. What irked the man the most was that he wouldn't have another chance to apply it to the Uchiha. It also reminded the traitor of the pain he himself had to endure when he bit into Naruto's neck. His mouth still hurt from that brat's damn acidic blood, despite it having been healed by the late Kabuto, not long after his encounter with Naruto. "I know I can't beat you, but my pride as an aspiring Taijutsu master won't let me back down," Lee declared as he tensed his muscles. "Konoha Senpyu." Even as the teen approached him, Naruto stayed where he was and watched on with a grin. Or so everyone thought. Just as Lee's foot neared him, Naruto took a single step back and ducked. Not a moment later, his attacker's strike flew over his head harmlessly. "Haha, gotta do better than that," Naruto called out with a maniacal laugh as he waited for his opponent to turn about and come back at him. This time, Lee came back at him with a leg sweep that was followed up with a roundhouse aimed for Naruto's waist. Laughing again, Naruto jumped up just enough and flipped, surprising Lee that he missed both times. "Hahaha. Come on. Is that all you can do?" Naruto taunted as he landed lightly on his feet a few meters away. Up on the balcony, Guy was internally panicking, worried sick for his student. He was also inwardly annoyed with the boy's attitude, unaware of Naruto's skills or the fact he was participating in the chunin exam solo. "Haven't you taught your student any manners, Kakashi?" Guy hissed at the perverted Cyclops in a rare show of annoyance, who shrugged and closed his uchiha, pocketing it. "He's not my student anymore." The lone Hatake replied lazily, dumbfounding the rookie genin around him that graduated with Naruto and their respective teachers. "What do you mean, Kakashi? If he's not on your team, then whose team is he on?" "He isn't with any of us," Asuma inquired as he joined the conversation. He asked Asandayami to go solo, and the Hokage granted his request. "That was 6 months ago when we got back from Team 7's first C-rank mission. I haven't found the time to confront him about it, but even if I did, it's virtually impossible to track the boy down," Kakashi answered, watching with a curious eye as Naruto continued to simply evade all of Lee's attacks instead of retaliating. He knew Naruto was capable of winning in an instant for 2 reasons. First, Kabuto had been suspected to be a spy for some time now and was suspected of being around mid to high Jounin level. Second, well, Kakashi never admitted it to anyone and probably never would, but Team 7 passed for one reason, and that was because of Naruto and Naruto alone. How he did it was by easily kicking Kakashi around in the same form Naruto was currently in and ripping the silver-haired Jounin a new asshole like a ragdoll caught in the jaws of a rabid Doberman pinscher. Naruto had then taken the bells, passed them off to his teammates, and left to do whatever he does. "The RRRR Konoha Dai Senpyu," Lee exclaimed in anger as he launched himself at Naruto yet again, only for his opponent to duck under his kick and flip away. Lee knew he couldn't keep this up much longer. He was nearly out of energy, but like he had said earlier, his pride as an aspiring Taijutsu master kept him from giving up. Either he would have to take off his weights or release at least one of the 8 chakra gates. "Lee." Guy called out from the stands, as if reading Lee's mind. "Take them off." Without hesitation, Lee leapt back so he stood on top the stone hand sign at the back of the arena and quickly removed his weights. Most of those who didn't know of the genin's training schedule were shocked when twin columns of dust erupted from the ground upon the weights impacting, the ground shaking slightly from the sheer weight. Naruto simply laughed again, only for his eyes to go wide when Lee disappeared from his spot. His instincts kicked in and Naruto listened, ducking just in time to dodge a roundhouse kick, only to fall victim to a mule kick to his face. Flying back and impacting the wall, Naruto used the dust cloud around him to toss his hit I-8 and perform one of the few ninjutsu he knew. Oten. Itsutsu Yari Aburetium. Naruto called out as he amassed a large amount of chakra in his forearms and slammed both of his fists on the ground, shattering the stone tiles while releasing the chakra build-up in his arms. 5 stone spikes erupted from the ground all around Lee, all aimed to impale him at the waist, but the spandex-clad genin jumped out of the way. Growling softly, Naruto slowly stepped out of the settling dust and glared angrily at Lee. The knee strike he took to the face had knocked out one of his canine teeth, his acidic scarlet blood dripping from his busted lip and hitting the ground. A slight amount of steam rose from the place the blood droplets hit the ground, surprising everyone in the room, with the only exception being the Sandaime and Orochimaru. Now I'm pissed. The black-eyed teen hissed as he started gathering his chakra and coating his entire body with it. Preparing to counter whatever his opponent was doing, Lee and Guy shared a knowing glance before Lee released the first 2 chakra gates, Kaiman and Kyuuman. Yummy Bakuden. Naruto called out as he jumped up a bit and slammed his fist on the ground on the way down, releasing the pent-up chakra all at once. As a result, a concussive wave of dark energy erupted from Naruto's fist, tossing the shattered stone tiles around him away and tossing Lee away as well, smashing the teen against the wall. Still slumped forward, Naruto stood up and turned his gaze on Lee, who was just starting to stand back up as well. Stay, Naruto hissed as he sprinted towards Lee, chakra writhing and swarming both of his arms from the shoulder down to his fingertips. Down. Clothes lining the Taijutsu user, Naruto tore Lee off of his feet before turning around and elbowing the teen in the gut, slamming Lee down on the ground with a smaller focused variation of his Yami Bakuden. Breathing a little heavily, Naruto spat out the blood that had pooled in his mouth and walked away to collect his hit I-8. Why winner? Uzumaki Naruto Hate called out hesitantly, flinching when Naruto glared at him as he passed by. Upon returning to the balconies, Naruto leaned against a railing and gnashed his teeth angrily, clutching the fang that had been knocked out of his mouth by Lee, said teen being taken away by a team of Mednin to be healed. Scoffing, Naruto pocketed his fang and growled when the very people he did not want to talk to came over to where he was. Leaving his hit I-8 around his neck, Naruto glanced at Team 7 out of the corner of his eye. What the hell do you want? Naruto snapped, making Sakura and Sasuke flinch. Sai stayed a few feet behind them so as not to get caught in the crossfire, Kakashi between him and his 2 teammates. Sasuke was the first to recover. Where did you get that power, dope? Give it to me. The lone uchiha demanded haughtily, making Naruto roll his eyes and struggle not to backhand the insolent brat. That power was my own, something I worked at to achieve, uchiha. Something you and your clan never understood. Itachi was the only one that did, and that's why he'll always be out of your league. Naruto hissed in irritation, still pissed off that Lee managed to knock out one of his teeth and land a hit on him, well in his shifted form, at that. What did you say? Sasuke snapped as he drew a kunai and moved to attack Naruto, but the hybrid slammed his tail into the Uchiha's gut, slamming him into the wall. Kakashi moved to defend his student as Naruto wrapped his tail around Sasuke's throat, though upset with said student's actions, but Naruto glared at him for a moment. Taking that as incentive enough to back down, Kakashi did, not wanting to get on his former student's bad side. Don't say a word, Sakura. Sai whispered into his pink-haired teammate's ear while placing a hand over the girl's move and restraining one of her arms. Or else you'll end up like Kabuto. Naruto won't hesitate to kill you if you attack him. Shaking in fear, Sakura nodded and stayed quiet as she remembered exactly what happened to Kabuto. I will say this only once, Uchiha. I despise you and your kind. I will not bow to your will. I will not grovel at the feet of a human like a whipped dog. Naruto growled dangerously as he slugged Sasuke in the stomach. And neither will my hive. Releasing the choking Uchiha, Naruto snapped at Sakura who flinched and squealed in fear as he stormed past her. Kakashi moved to grab Naruto by the shoulder, but said Genin's tail smacked his hand away. Before he could call out to the teen, Kakashi's attention was diverted to Sasuke as he coughed up a bit of blood, still gasping for air. Naruto was rather pissed about everything that had gone on over the week and it was all because of one damn person, Orochimaru. Had it not been for that bastard, Naruto would still be able to see everything around him properly, but because of the cursed seal, he could barely extend his senses more than 50 meters instead of the usual 200 meters. Because of that, Naruto had failed to eliminate enough of the genin teams to avoid the preliminaries and also made him fail at properly gauging Lee's strength and that had cost him a bit. Snarling angrily, Naruto stepped into a dark shadow and disappeared, simultaneously reappearing deep with his main hive. A warrior approached him, but Naruto would not have it and backhanded the Xeno, completely crushing its face and splattering bits of its brain on the wall, the Xeno's acidic blood burning away at the stone. He did not want to be bothered. Naruto flexed his claws as he entered the only tunnel leading to Wave Country that connected his two current hives, black tribal wave design spreading across his body. He had a month to prepare for the third portion of the chunin exams, and he had just the thing in mind to ensure his victory in both the tournament and the invasion. And to do that, Naruto knew he would need to get used to the cursed seal and master its powers. Coughing into the cloth, he leaned back against the headboard and scowled as he looked at the cloth in his hands. He'll get back at that abomination for doing this to him. He'll turn the brat into his personal weapon and revive his fallen division. Racked with another coughing fit, Danzo pressed the cloth to his mouth again. When it stopped, he pulled the cloth away and looked at it. There was a good amount of blood splatter on it. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki will pay for his insolence, Danzo muttered softly to himself. He had barely escaped with only 3 of his root the night Naruto and his creatures had attacked. Danzo was lucky one of the root with him was a skilled mednin, who had barely managed to repair the multiple hairline fractures in his left arm and heal the acid burns and slash wounds littering his body. What truly upset Danzo about his fight with the Jinchuriki was that he wasn't affected by Shisui Sharingan's abilities to manipulate the target's mind. Naruto had forced him to flee before he could activate Izanagi, and that alone cost Danzo dearly. "Mark my words, boy," Danzo whispered harshly. "You will pay for what you did to me and my root." So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.